Okay, it's been a while, but I'm back. We're talking about some Siege today, of course. I hope everybody had happy holidays, happy New Year's, whatever you celebrate. And alright, so specifically we are talking about the qualifiers. We are in the midst of them. We've already seen the first of them, which was the Apac Qualifier, and upcoming we have the Latam Qualifier, the European Qualifier, and the North American Qualifier in that order. So before we look at those, let's just look at who has already qualified for SI 2022. And of course, that means the people that do not need to try to qualify. And so it is in alphabetical order here, so not by region. We have BDS, Damwon, Dark Zero, Elevate, FaZe Clan, Furia, Na'Vi, Ninjas in Pajamas, Oxygen, Rogue, Sandbox, Sonics, Space Station, Empire, Liquid, and Team 1. And then we also have Cyclops, who did win that Apac Qualifier, and then 3 more spots to be determined. So, right, let's take a look at that Apac Qualifier. Alright, so once again, it's already taken place. It was originally scheduled to take place in Thailand, but they did it online instead. And the teams that ended up participating were Cyclops, Invictus, Direwolves, and Talon, but originally it was supposed to be, instead of Invictus and Direwolves, it was supposed to be APR and Knights. So there's a little bit of it, here it is, a little bit of a note. So former participants, Knights, who were replaced by Direwolves, and APR, who were replaced by Invictus. Knights, they withdrew, maybe partially due to travel concerns, but in the end it was an online event anyways, so I suppose that didn't matter. But I believe it was due to the roster changing, so some sort of internal something. Anyways, they withdrew from the thing. And APR, who won the Apex South qualifier, they are an all Hong Kong team, but apparently some number of them are not of age, they are underage, and so they were disqualified from the event, and so their spot was given to Invictus, who I think were the runner-up in that qualifier. Okay, so what happened in the actual bracket? So Cyclops played Talon and Invictus played Direwolves. So Cyclops, I think, the favorite going into the thing. They looked pretty good over the course of the entire year, although a bit shaky, especially towards the end. They kind of maybe peaked in Mexico, where they were just 1 round away from making it out of their group, but instead their hopes were dashed by Team 1. And then from there, they fell off a little bit. They didn't get to go to Sweden, but now here they are on the come-up once again, going to SI. They won 2-0 against Talon, and Direwolves defeated Invictus. So I think Invictus were the other favorite for the event. If it wasn't going to be Cyclops, it would be Invictus, but Direwolves took them down here. So a little bit of an upset. And then Direwolves even took 1 map off of Cyclops here in the upper bracket final. So if this had just been single elimination, Cyclops would have won it right here, and it would have looked like Direwolves were pretty good. They beat Invictus, who they were probably thought to lose to, and then they took a map off Cyclops, which Talon were unable to do. But then, of course, we have the lower bracket and the grand finals to examine. So in the lower bracket, Talon do manage to take a map off of Invictus. So Invictus, once again, looking weaker than perhaps they were projected to be. But then they do win the run back against Direwolves. So 2-1, they still go all 3 maps, but this time Invictus takes it over Direwolves, sending them to the grand final, where they lose 0-3 to Cyclops. So clean 3-0 from Cyclops, and as you'll see, it is all in regulation, not even max regulation, a 7-3, a 7-4, and a 7-1. So pretty handy victory for Cyclops in this bracket, and they'll be at the Six Invitational. I think a lot of people will be glad to see it. They were quite electric at Mexico, and yes, again, they've had their lows, but they're a fun team to watch, and they're a team with a lot of potential. And if we want to see Apac continue their upward trajectory that they had in 21 into 2022, then Cyclops might be a big part of it. So now let's take a look at the structure of the other qualifiers, which have not yet taken place. Okay, so moving on. Latam is the next one coming up. Today is January 10th, if you're watching this the day it's uploaded, and on the 15th and 16th is when this qualifier is going to take place. That is this coming Saturday and Sunday, if you're watching this video, of course, before those dates. So who's it going to be? This qualifier is a little bit different. There are 6 teams in it, although it's sort of semantics, the way that it's 6 teams, because it is going to end up being a 4-team playoffs, but right now there are 2 teams that auto-qualified for that bracket, and then the other 4 teams need to play through a best-of-1 round robin to make it into that bracket. So you know, at what point do you actually call it the close qualifier? I suppose they're calling it when it's the 6 teams, okay? But you could just call it when it's the 4 teams, and then it's identical to the other one, just the qualification is slightly different. So, right, MIBR, Malvinas, Phoenix, Black Dragons, Furious, and Aetheris. So 2 teams, like I said before, auto-qualified for the playoffs. Those are MIBR and Phoenix. Those were the top 2 point holders that did not qualify for SI automatically, so they were outside of the top 16 teams in the world, and they were, of course, in this region. So here they are. And then the 3rd team, in terms of points that didn't make it, also makes it into the group stage, and they are joined by 1 team from the Mexico qualifier, 1 team from the Latam South qualifier, and 1 team from the Brazil qualifier. So they'll play best of 1 round robin, and then the top 2 teams will advance. Presumably, the top team from the round robin will play the lower seed of these 2, which is Phoenix. So, I mean, you know, just if this was the order that the teams placed in, it would be Aetheris versus Phoenix, and it'd be Black Dragons versus MIBR. Theoretically, maybe that's not actually the case, because as we'll get to in a little bit, the seeding for NA is weird. So maybe the seeding for the other regions will be weird as well. I'm not sure. We'll have to see. And okay, so that's what's going to go down here. One more time, I'll say it. Best of 1s here. And then this is a single elimination bracket, so no lower bracket. So in that way, it is also different from the other qualifiers in, you know, Europe and NA and the Apac one that took place. So best of 3, and then a best of 5 grand final. So right, let's move on to Europe. Okay, so Europe close qualifier includes Vitality, Kavana, Secret, and M&M. This one's interesting in that these are all 4 EUL 2022 teams. So at this point, they are all tier 1 teams. Vitality and Kavana were tier 1 last season, and so was Team Secret, but Team Secret actually defended their position in the league. They had to play against Hellraisers, and okay, so let me just talk about the structure of that. So the top 2 teams from EU Challenger League were M&M and Hellraisers, and then they played against each other. The winner of that auto-qualified for EUL, that was M&M, and then the loser got a chance to fight against Team Secret for their spot, but Team Secret defeated Hellraisers, and that was actually quite close. They had to reverse 3-0 them, so that is Hellraisers won the first map, and that was in regulation, and then in the second map, it went all 15 rounds, but Hellraisers still took that, and then Team Secret had to win the next 3 maps in a row to take the series, and they did, and I believe they didn't go to overtime again. They won like 7-1, 7-3, 7-4, or something like that. So pretty impressive comeback, and Team Secret might just be on the come up in general. They struggled mostly throughout the entire 2021 season, and of course that put them in relegation, but not auto relegation. You know, they got the chance to fight for it, and they did win. And this has been that maybe this come up has been catalyzed. Is that the has been caused by Kendrew joining the roster, and of course he led them to victory in that match, and also in the open qualifier number 1. So we'll see how they're doing, how they do in this close qualifier. M&M, you know, just finally got through their slog in Challenger League and made it to the big league. So we'll see how they perform in this qualifier, and then also in EUL. And then we have Kavana and Vitality. They both pretty narrowly missed out on auto qualifying for SI. Vitality did go to Sweden, and Kavana nearly went to Sweden, but they didn't quite make it. So we'll see how they do. Vitality, I think, is probably just the favorite going into this event. Pretty much always just the team on the left here is the favorite, because they were the ones that accumulated the most SI points throughout the year but did not make it. And then Kavana, I got a note. So I believe this is the case. My understanding is that they have been trialing a new 5th player, or maybe they even intend to pick up this player, but they're not playing with them yet. So the roster still consists of these 5 players, but they are trialing apparently a new 5th player. But I don't know who that is, and I don't know who that is, who that player is supposed to be replacing. And so I'm assuming that player knows that they're going to be replaced or are being considered to be replaced. But the other 4 players certainly know it if this is the case. And so, right, all of this to say that there might be a little bit of discordance within Kavana with the roster, some number of them knowing this, and maybe all of them know. Anyways, all of this going on. So it might be a bit tense, so that might affect their play, and we'll have to see. So the battle of the 2 eyes and this V and this marshmallow will take place, and this might be the most exciting qualifier once again, because all T1 teams, for some reason they did not do the seeding already. I'm assuming it should, based on just traditional seeding standards, it should be Vitality versus M&M and Kavana versus Secret, but it could also be Vitality versus Secret and Kavana versus M&M, because that's the way that NA got seeded, unless that's an error. And again, I'll show that once I get to that in just a second. So we'll see how this proceeds. Some teams are playing some teams in here in the upper bracket semifinals, and then there's a lower bracket, there's an upper bracket final, grand final, all this stuff. All of it's best of 3 except for the grand final, which is best of 5. So just like the Apac qualifier was, just like the NA qualifier will be. And now let's move on to the NA qualifier, but really quickly, the dates for this: the 22nd and the 23rd, which are not this coming Saturday and Sunday, but the next Saturday and Sunday. So 1 week after the Latam qualifier. And so 1 week after this EU qualifier, we will have the NA Close Qualifier. So this one is getting pretty close to SI. It's a little bit of a concern for the teams. It's very good for viewers. It means that pretty much every weekend in January, we're getting some sort of action in the form of each of the qualifiers. And then there's also SCS going on if you dig that sort of thing. It's fun to watch. It's a nice T3 competition in NA. And okay, so once again, 29th and the 30th of January, we will see the Close Qualifier for NA. This is the 30th. That is 9 days, I think, before SI starts. So that's a bit of a consideration for whichever these teams actually qualified. So you have to assume that all of these teams are both prepping to play this qualifier, but then also to play SI, because even if they win this, then they only have 9 days to prep for SI, so that's a bit ridiculous. So of course, they should probably be doing some amount of prep for SI, but if they don't even win this qualifier, then all of that was for nothing. So it makes sense that NA does their qualifier last, because these teams can get to SI most easily. It's in Montreal, Canada, so of course these teams are the closest to it. But really, couldn't you just do all the qualifiers on like the same weekend at the beginning of January or something? Give these teams more time to prep. And so once again, that is a bit of a concession in that it is worse for viewers. It's harder to catch all the games, but it is better for the team. So, compromises were made in some fashion, and this is how we ended up. So, right, let's take a look at it. Participants: TSM, Mirage, Parabellum, and One Shot. TSM were the top global standings team to miss out, and Mirage were the second, so here they are, auto-invited. Parabellum and One Shot each had to play through open qualifiers to get here, and Parabellum won the first one, One Shot won the second one. And these are probably the most deserving teams to be in this qualifier in general. TSM, of course, just barely missed out. Like, they just struggled a little bit too much, just barely too much within North America to make it. If they just done slightly better in stage 3, they would already be in SI. Wouldn't have to play through this, and it'd be like Dark Zero here instead. Mirage were pretty good throughout the year, and maybe their stats were padded just a little bit by that first stage where they got 3rd place, and then there was no major, so they were assigned extra points based on getting 3rd place. That was back when they had Hot and Cold. And let me mention, so this is, I suppose, the longest they've had the same 5-man roster since they've been in T1. Originally, they had, for stage 1, they had Hot and Cold, and then for stage 2, they had Quartz, and stage 3, they had Thomas, and now we are post stage 3, and it's still the same 5-man roster. So hopefully they've had a little bit more time to gel. That seems like it's been part of Mirage's issue. They just kept making changes, and the Hot and Cold one, I don't know what the deal was behind the scenes, but he joined SSG, so it perhaps was an offer he could not refuse, a buyout, and he's done quite well on SSG, so good for him. But left Mirage without Hot and Cold, and then Quartz was supposed to be their 5th anyways. The only reason they got Hot and Cold was because Quartz had, I think, visa issues, so he had to wait, and then he didn't do that well in stage 2, and so maybe they could have given another stage. It was his first and only stage in tier 1, but he is still here. He's in this. He's in the qualifier on One Shot, but again, it is Thomas now playing on Mirage, so we'll see where they're at. I expect them to do fairly well, but TSM are still the favorites going into this. But I think for some people, TSM are probably still the most likely to win, but Parabellum probably have a lot of fans going into this. They played at the previous SI, and they didn't do like amazingly, but they did better than most people could have expected. They made it out of the group, which, all the teams except for 3 teams made it out of groups, and then they beat G2 even. So, they put up a strong performance, and now a little bit different roster here. And they are a T1 team, though. So let me mention 3 T1 teams in this, and then One Shot, who you know, maybe they'll still end up being a team-on-team. Who really knows who that 10th team is gonna be? But okay, so for sure, 3 T1 teams. Parabellum won their qualifier or relegation match rather against XSET, so they are officially NAL 2022 contenders. So this roster, we'll have to see what happens. They are playing TSM in the first round, and I'll talk about that in 1 second. Let me just mention, One Shot is probably have looked like over the course of 2021 the second best CL team. You know, at one point or another, it might have looked like Ariel, it might have looked like Wichita Wolves, but I think over the course of the entire year, it looked like One Shot were probably the runner-up in terms of you know, team quality within T2. Up for debate, but you know, here they are. So they've certainly proved something. And right, so looking at the seeding, it should be, I think in theory, TSM versus One Shot. It should be the highest seeded team versus the lowest seeded team, and they are the lowest seeded team by way of them qualifying last through the, you know, they played in the open qualifier number 1, but they didn't make it through, so they had to play in the second one, so that puts Parabellum at higher seed than them. And then I guess you know, it's sort of arbitrary to say, but since these 2 teams didn't even have to play through the qualifiers, but seed 1, 2, 3, 4 in the order that is shown on the screen. So it should be seed 1 versus 4, TSM versus One Shot, and then seed 2 versus 3, Mirage versus Parabellum. And I want to say that in some sort of official capacity, it was announced that that was the order they were supposed to play in, or maybe it was just like community conjecture, but I thought they said something about it was supposed to be TSM versus One Shot and Mirage versus Parabellum, but okay, I guess not the case. So probably a lot of people think that whoever wins this game might go on to win the entire thing, are probably the favorite at that point. And, you know, maybe not. There is still a lower bracket to play through, and seeing as though despite the seeding thing, seeing as though this is all best of 3 or best of 5 in the grand finals, and then there's a lower bracket, the best team should still win this, even though things are just a little bit weird because we're avoiding best of 1s and even double elimination, all this stuff, and the whole grand final thing. I don't think they have a handicap in this, so I don't think there is a map advantage for the upper bracket team. Maybe they have the map pick advantage, but outside of that, there's not any sort of tangible advantage except for, I mean, I don't know, having to play fewer games or something. I don't know. Because if you make it to the upper bracket final and then you lose, then you have to play through the lower bracket final and the grand final, whereas the upper bracket winner only has to play grand final. You get to warm up through lower bracket, but it's still a ton of play. You know, Siege is just quite a grueling game. And so, okay, I guess that does it really. Who do I think's gonna win? Again, it's probably TSM. They have had their struggles, and Parabellum are hot right now, so maybe Parabellum, but traditional wisdom says TSM. For the other qualifiers, I suppose what, MIBR are maybe the favorite for Latam, and Vitality are the favorite maybe for EU. But again, like any of these could go anyway. Latam especially having 6 teams, and then 4 T1 teams of maybe like similar-ish stature in the EU one, and then 3 T1 teams, and then a very close T2 team. It could go anyway, but again, those are how I would predict it. I'm not going to predict the entire bracket or anything, but we'll have to see. And I guess finally, I'll just mention, it's probably best for NA and for Siege as a whole if TSM makes it through. Certainly, SI's viewership will probably be hurt to some degree if TSM is not there. It's just a massive org and a very popular team, even despite the org, having Bolo on it and whatnot. And in terms of NA winning it, if you're from NA or just an NA fan or whatever, if you want NA to win, our best shot is a full-powered TSM from this qualifier. Of course, the other teams have their, you know, Sonics and Space Station, Auction, Dark Zero. They all have their shot. But if we want to have the most high-power teams, then a full-force TSM is our best bet, I'd say. You know, if they're struggling, maybe Parabellum is a better bet to win this and then do good there. But if TSM can get back to their former glory and you know, just figure their shit out, because they've had their struggles, role struggles, and this and that. But if they can get back to where they were previously, then that's going to be our best bet. And okay, I think that's all I need to talk about here. I hope I didn't miss anything significant. 29 days away from SI is where we currently stand, so just a little bit less than a month and we'll be there. But in the meantime, we've got to see what happens in these qualifiers. So, right, if you have any comments, leave them below. If you have any questions, let me know. And with all of that being said, catch you in the next video.